Hey, on this episode of the Athletic Potential Podcast, we're going to have a special guest episode today. We're going to be interviewing Dan John. For those that have listened to the podcast previously, you know that Dan John is someone who I refer to quite frequently. I consider him a mentor. Dan is a renowned figure in the world of strength conditioning, and he's a true luminary whose expertise really just transcends the boundaries of fitness and athletic performance. His career spans decades and has really made a name for himself as a top-level coach, but also has shared his vast knowledge through his writings, through his seminars and speaking, as well as his own podcast. He's got a kind of a fun, witty blend of wisdom and humor and some practical insights, and tells and teaches lessons through stories, and he's helped athletes around the globe. If you're really looking to improve any type of physical prowess or athleticism or anything like that, this podcast is for you. And the fact that Dan's going to give us some really good insights in regards to things to do when you're getting ready to actually perform in the moment. We talk extensively about youth sports performance, as well as specialization, and his take on what needs to be done to improve that, as well as athletic development. And we talk quite a bit about baseball, softball throwers, and we touch on arm care. Overall, there is a wealth of knowledge that comes from this podcast today, and we're excited that Dan took the time to come on. And on a personal note, Dan's been a mentor of mine for many years now, and he is someone that I bounce ideas off of, and he has greatly enhanced not only my training for my clients, but also my rehab practice. His insights throughout his injuries have actually led to quite a few discoveries on my own in regards to treating my patients. And so I consider him a mentor. He's been not only a mentor to me, but also to my wife, and really a hero to my kids. They love him to death. His generosity outside the weight room, in my opinion, far exceeds the knowledge that he has in the weight room. So really great. Excited to have him on and to be a part of the podcast. And with no further ado, let's get started. All right. Hey, Dan, how's it going?
Good. I've just got back from practice. It's a cold and blustery day, a perfect day for Winnie the Pooh. And then I warmed up by taking a sauna, so I look a little red as we speak right now. So it's all good.
Good. So we're going to jump right in. Most of my audience is baseball, softball, parents or players. We do have a fair amount of volleyballers and some other just youth athletes. And so I kind of want to jump right into maybe some of these youth athletic development questions. So,
you said baseball? Okay, so I'll talk a lot slower, okay?
Okay. Thanks for that. For my benefit, if anything. All right. So in your book, Intervention, you outlined some strength standards that you had, I believe, for your high school athletes. Do those same standards apply for baseball players and softball players?
If I was the high school strength coach, yes. If you're a one-off, no. So what I mean by that is, if you're in a group of, like, we had 62 males playing football when you're male athletes, and we had 62 people hit the Big Blue standards. So, if you're part of a group of people who's all cleaning 205, you'll probably rise up to the 205 level. If you're just a coach by yourself, one athlete, you're just going to have to realize that you're trudging to the Yukon Gold Rush. You're following you're following some footprints, but yeah, you got to know where you're going. It's so if if you're a dad or a coach and you only have the one athlete, couple athletes, you just got to once you and the other thing, the side stories. Once you get one athlete to the level, the other athletes get there much faster. It's weird because it's just like what Heidegger taught us in the physiology of strength, is that once you get to a certain strength level and then take 6 weeks off, it takes less and less and less and less time to get to those strength levels. When you see somebody else clean 205, it's easier for you to clean 205. So my answer is qualified, and I get that, but I think probably there's a few of your listeners that are going, okay, that makes sense. Because, you read a program online, you try to adapt it to your home gym, your tiny little facility, and it doesn't work as well as the person who has 4,000 athletes going in and out of the facility, and they're all around it all the time. So you got an NFL guy over there, you got a Major League Baseball player over there. You're gonna be stronger and faster in a setting like that because you just see it all day long. It's like you can't be surprised when if a kid who's a good reader comes from a family who reads. It's the same thing. If a child's read 80 books on their own, or mom read him 80 books on his own, pretty good chance he's going to be a good reader. It's the same exact thing. There's that statement, and I still think it's important, as the idea that you are the average of your 5 best friends. And I think it's also true in the weight room. I think you become the average of the 5 athletes you train with. And so if they all screw around and dink around, you're not going to be very good. But if this guy's getting ready for the combine and this girl's getting ready to go play volleyball for a Big Ten team, you got to raise the roof. That'll raise the roof a little bit. Yeah.
Okay.
And for those who just saw me do the raise the roof symbol, I do apologize.
Oh man. So most of my audience definitely hears me quote you quite a bit. So it's something I talk about in podcasts. A lot of my training is based on your standards, as well as like movements, push, pull, hinge, squat, carry. And so they hear quite a bit of that. And so one of my next questions would be, the carry is one thing that I use extensively. And I know some of the standards for that are essentially, can you carry your body weight? And then can you carry twice your body weight for a certain distance? And I always say, make it look good, so it's not like dragging you down.
Yeah, that's a good addition. That's a very good point. And gentle listener, you have to understand is when I say something like that would be a trap bar deadlift, and then you carry your own body weight for steps. The reason I like these is if you can carry your own body weight, it's probably going to be better if you're a military person. If you're saving somebody's life, it's really nice to have a background in loaded carries. Okay. It's a weird kind of strength that's hard to explain. I think it makes you far overall stronger than 90% of the crap you see in a typical gym. So, but giving you standards on how much, that's just going to be, what happens is this. I get a young new thrower, and she comes into our training facility and she sees Emily and Kelly and Lindsay using 85 pounds. Well, she's going to try the 85 pounds first. So when I train people, very often they go heavier. And it's not because I have some magic wand. I'm not Harry Potter yet. But again, it's the see it and do it things. And that's why, in Epstein's book Range, and some of his other works, he talks about, being the youngest of 6. If mom and dad have 6 boys, and dad's a baseball fanatic, I can almost guarantee the best player will be the 6th one. Because they were bunting when his classmates never had seen a bat before, It's not. Usain Bolt was the 6th child of 6, I'm the 6th of 6, and I'm marvelous. So that has to be true.
Oh, man. So, okay. So say you're same situation. You're the second or first child in a family, and you just heard that. So how do you become the 6th child and get the benefits of it?
Well, the best thing you can do, anytime you, and don't forget, I was the only discus thrower in my family and only real American football player. And what you got to do is, the best thing you can do is get yourself in a situation where you're around people who are better, smarter, or maybe not even better. You want to get yourself in a situation where the norm is a fairly disciplined, high level of work. And that's the key. So when you're the 6th child, the norm is playing catch, and what is that game where you have we used to call it base stealer, but I think it's called pickle in some places. Your norm is playing pickle. So what you need to do is find a group that the norm is playing pickle. The norm is, practicing, the swing. The norm is lifting weights and doing conditioning. Yeah. And it's just easier to be the sixth child in that family because the norm is literally just your environment is built in. Yeah.
Okay. So you have to go seek it out.
The thing is, you could be the youngest of six and be, and get the exact wrong information. My niece was telling me about this child who, and this is a sad story. What do you want to be when you grow up? And the child said nothing. And this is the hard one to nothing. What do you mean by that? Yeah, no one in my family does anything. So his norm is, if you're in England, living off the dole. If you're here in the States, public support. And I'm not judging it, but that's not the life I'd want to leave. So,
yeah. Okay. So you live in a world of helping athletes perform at a high level, especially when it counts. What is your advice to the high school athlete who may be struggling to perform on the field, but can deliver in practice and in the weight room?
So I have an entire book. It's the worst selling book I've ever made. It's called Now What? And what you got to do. So I'm very proactive to athletes not doing well in competition. I talk about it constantly. I talk about competition. In fact, in this morning session, I was talking to our freshman thrower about it. So what you need to do is there's three things I think you need to ratchet down. First is what's the level of physical tension that you have when in using a baseball example, you're in the batting cage and you're just stroking, bomb after bomb after bomb after bomb. Check in at that time and get a sense of how much physical tension do you feel. Now, the interesting thing is, I don't know. I don't know what it would take to hit. I can hit a ball a long ways, but I've never thought of it. But I know on a scale of 1 to 10, throwing the discus far, so imagine the hitting a baseball will be similar. You want to be about a 4 on the physical tension level. So you actively have to practice either raising up your physical tension level or bringing it down. Interesting, I just made a muscle. One of the best ways to bring down physical tension is to squeeze and then blow it off. So make a muscle and then shake it off. You can grimace your face and then go wobbly cheeks. You can do that with the whole body. And you can actively practice bringing your tension levels down. And if you ever watch Michael Phelps get ready for a race, he would go through this little shakedown cruise. And that was brilliant. The second side is the mental side, which I call arousal. Okay, the mental arousal you want to be. Right before, it's, you're in the World Series, it's 3-3. You're at home, you're behind by 2 runs, there's 2 outs. There's a guy in second and third. What do I need to tell you as you go up to the plate? This is the biggest moment of your life. If you fail, you will be famous forever for choking in the World Series. Is that a helpful thing to learn? So what you need to do is make sure you got to practice arousal control. So arousal control, like in American football with sophomore quarterbacks, I'd often put 12, 13 defenders out there so that it looked busier. When they made their reads, it was much harder because there was an extra athlete or 2 in the zones. So it made them, you got to throw, it taught them to release the ball faster. Now in the game, there's no one there, but the ball's still getting released faster. So maybe you need to practice scenarios. And the funny thing is, you'll hear guys talk about this all the time on these, when they go back and the 1972 Cincinnati Reds, and the guy will say something like, this is what you think of when you're 10 years old by yourself in your backyard. This is the situation you prep yourself for. Oddly, I think that's one of the best things you do is mental rehearsal, is practice it. And then as a coach, I like to put you in situations to perform. So, you can start real simple. You could tell the kid, that's it. Okay, it's 3-3, bottom of the ninth. The whole. It is funny to think that when Chad Harbach wrote the book, The Art of Fielding, someone said that they had invented the bottom of the ninth 2-out scenario, and I'm like, because Mighty Casey, that never happened. That is what we all think about. If you're thinking about baseball, if you're shooting free throws, you're probably thinking about the NBA final. You know what I'm saying? So what I can do as a coach is, in a batting cage, we're gonna lob you a 60-mile-an-hour ball, and I'm gonna put you in a situation, and I say, if you crush it, we win. If you top it, or if you roll it or top it, we lose. And even though it's only going 60, and say I don't know, what's a good number you would train in the batting cage with the machine?
Anywhere from 75 to 85, depending on.
So clearly slow, okay? And then maybe you can ratchet it up a month later to 70, a month later to 80, and a month later to 90. And just get the person practicing. And it's just the one swing. Just the one swing. Okay? And the reason I like that is you put some mental arousal issues on the athlete. And then, of course, the third, it's a triangle, folks. So tension, arousal. The bottom is heart rate. And I really think it's an area people have misjudged for years. Ever since, Cooper and aerobics and all that stuff, Jane Fonda, Go for the Burn, we've always equated higher heart rate with somehow better. And it's just not true. So as a discus thrower, I know that if I'm in the low 90s, and I can't give you much more range, because at the Nationals, I'm not going to take my pulse. But I know, because if I can be like, hey man, how you doing? Good to see you. Thanks. I want to be at that level with my breathing. I think it's called zone 2. That's a crap thing. We all know what we mean by it. Sorry, and as you know me, I hate all this. We keep trying to pour all these fancy phrases in my field. And it's like, just stop. But, if you talk to most coaches, most young coaches, they want my heart rate at 170. But you know what? My whole body is panicking at that level. So my arousal is going up because it's freaking out, because it thinks it's fight, flight, or freeze. They think my body thinks there's rattlesnakes. We're in a circle of rattlesnakes. If it's too low, you just don't have the arousal to compete at the high enough level. So I find heart rate is a real nice tool. I would guess, at the plate, you want to be probably 80s, 90s. Is that right? Is that ballpark? It's for those you measure heart rate, measure heart rate in the box. There's that famous bad study I tell my students all the time at St. Mary's about, and they don't. I tell them, I don't know if they listen, but I tell them, where this guy realized that 67% of the time in Division I basketball, the guy makes the male basketball player makes the first of a one-on-one shot 67% of the time. Well, then he studied Division I basketball players, and he found out an interesting thing is that that's not even close. It's more like 90%. But then when you look at the study again, he gave the basketball players 10 straight shots. And if you give a basketball player 10 straight shots, they hit it about 90% almost universally at Division I. But the first shot was still 67%. So if you're a basketball coach and you're having all your players take 10 free throws in a row and then looking at data, the data has no value. What you want to do is win sprints back and forth. You probably want to, mess with, mess their hair up. I'd like to go a lot more violent, but this is 2023. I'd push, shove, call them some names that are probably inappropriate, throw them a ball and say, make the shot, loser. Because that's what it's going to be like at an away game. The crowd's not going to get, American sports aren't like rugby. People don't quiet down for the kickers. We make more noise, So when you look at this kind of thing, you also have to be very specific to what's really going on in the field of play. Now, you're saying that this is a strength and conditioning coach's job. I would say absolutely 100%. This is what a strength and conditioning coach should be doing, is preparing you for the moment of performance, not for, looking good in the pictures for the magazine. And let me say this. The modern athlete is more concerned about a lot of them are more concerned about their follows in social media than they are about performance on the field of play. That's a jerky thing to say, and I'll deny it if someone quotes me. But I think it's true. And we're having this great conversation during our morning walk. It's too bad you weren't there. I said that, a number of the people I follow on Instagram, it's pretty clear they use Photoshop and filters. And I said it this morning is, where is the difference between AI and Photoshop come? Where is that? So if every picture you put online is Photoshopped, and I'm selling, I tell you one thing, and you know this, you know me in real life, I need my face Photoshopped in every picture. I'm an ugly dude. And so if I have all my stuff Photoshopped and perfect lighting and all the rest, and then I tell you to do what I'm doing, I'm also lying to you about what we're doing. Long point. But I want the listeners to realize that there's more to strength and conditioning than just 5 sets of 2 or whatever it is.
Yeah. So something that I've included in training with our athletes is they have essentially a competition with certain lifts or certain things they have to do, and they only get limited amount of reps to be able to make it happen, or they have to make the reps count or they're out. They don't get to do the extra reps. So I used to have guys always complain about doing more reps, and then by adding the competition in, now I got guys complaining about they can't do more reps because they didn't perform. So I thought that was kind of fun. I got that from you, but
that's a nice way to flip the switch, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And if you ever talk to any good coaches, and love him or hate him, the thing I always like about Nick Saban is that he's so honest about, doing the work. He's just so honest about it. And I don't know if I like him or hate him. I don't really know him personally, but he says basically the same thing a lot with his athletes. Yeah. What you're doing, you have the right. The coach there's a school over here called Hillcrest. And this is back, but he used to make his seniors and his captains clean up after practice. It was their job to mop the mats. It was their job to put the towels away. It was their job to clean up and roll everything up. And he figured it was an honor to do that. And so what happened is, if you're a freshman wrestler, for the years you were there, you got a chance to see the superstars. I know this is a weird sentence, but I'm working with this All-American. And about 2 weeks ago at practice, I said, "Oh, we need this piece of equipment." My All-American said, "I'll go get it." So that gave me a chance to talk to my underclassmen athletes and say, "Did you see that? Did you see the All-American, the school record holder, the two-time conference champion? That's the athlete who instantly volunteered to go get the stuff for practice." And I said, "You can't buy that kind of example." And if you want to turn a program around, make it an honor to do the dirty work, because it's where victory comes in the tight moments, the little things.
Okay, thank you. We're gonna shift gears and run to always a hot topic in baseball and softball, and that is arm care, or arm exercises, shoulder exercises, whatever you want to call it. They are a lot of them are doing now. A lot of the athletes are. What would your ideal arm care program look like for a high school, college age pitcher? And how often would you have them performing these things?
Yeah. Well, first off, I would train them like javelin throwers. Javelin throwers. They're as much energy a pitcher has to put up with it, you multiply it by the physics of the javelin, and it gets worse. So one thing, and I learned this from a very famous pitcher, is after almost every practice, I would suggest throwing left-handed. Whether I'm sure there'll be some people disagree, but the upside of throwing left-handed, my All-American has a hurt wrist right now. So she's taken almost 2 full months of left-handed throwing. And I got to tell you, her insights about how the discus goes is miles ahead. Also, too, when you're doing the goofy side throwing, I shouldn't have said left hand, the less dominant, whatever you want to say, is when you're doing all that, your body has a built-in coach, the right side or the good hand. And so when you start throwing that way, so as you do things, you start to pick up on certain things that you might do. It's funny. I'm a big believer in ruining the shoelaces as a pitcher or javelin thrower, okay? Trying to get those hips all the way around. Well, it's weird because on the left side, you'll do that very quickly without a lot of instruction because it's so much more efficient to throw ruining the shoelace with the left side. I would also, there's two other things. I've got a whole collection of small light balls. They're in kilos. You've seen it in my gym, haven't you? All those small. Mm-hmm. Now, most of my athletes have them right now, but there's a couple exercises I'd recommend. And again, I would say this would be after practice. Doesn't take, how long does it take to throw some balls back and forth left-handed? But the other thing is take the balls and then throw the balls backwards. And I wouldn't even mind throwing it with both hands backwards. So you're doing the throwing motion backwards into a wall. And then there's an exercise we do for our javelin throwers where they do the whole motion, but then throw the ball into the wall behind them. And I'm trying to get them to throw a little bit more like a cricket pitcher in the game cricket, which is a fast. By the way, the best javelin thrower in the world is from India, and the national sport is cricket. So, I'm not saying that, to be a great javelin thrower, you have to, move to India and play cricket. But there is something nice about that drill, and it really seems it just seems to be a nice little fun. It's a fun little drill. I don't know how valuable. So, goofy hand throws, and then backwards throws with both hands, and then that behind the back throw into a wall. Those would be my throwing family. And then I would do my best if I were a pitching coach. Let me give you 3 things I think you should do. The first is heavy suitcase carries. One of the professional teams I work with, they pinged me an email about a month later. They think it speeds up adult fastballs. If you can speed up an adult Major League professional's, fastball, I don't care what you're doing. You're right. So for me, suitcase carry would be number 1. And then some big member either of the squat family or the deadlift family, the hinge family. You just got to get stupid strong in the butt, hips, and lower back. And then the third thing I'd really love if you can get them to do is, I think suspension trainers this is what they're good for. But the T's, the Y's, and the I, a lot of training with the elbows going back, a lot of training with the elbows going to the sides, a lot of just to really fill it up. Yesterday I got my flu, COVID, and pneumonia shots, and every time I just moved my shoulders, I was in great pain. So you should thank me, and your audience should appreciate how. I tell you, man, they said it might hurt the next day. It's like, yeah, okay, I see what you mean. That's okay. So I'm good though. I'll survive.
Good. So, are you having your throwers do that every day that they throw, or even off days when they don't throw?
Those drills, the throwing drills.
Well, and the TYs and Is.
We build those into the warm-ups. So, because of the facilities I'm using at the college, we built those in the warm-ups, and that's just how we do it. I think when you said baseball, it's probably something you do after practice. We're not, or after a game, we're not worried about someone coming out and throwing, really hard and fast on day one. Where it looks to me like, especially with youth baseball, they're just trying to see how fast they can destroy the kid's elbow. I see these dads, it's like, how fast can I ruin my son's arm? Oh, good. We're going to put him in a fall league, a winter league. We're going to have him in the spring. Oh, yes. 7 summer leagues. And then, a year later, kids try to, brush his hair and he can't, Yeah. So yeah, have a mullet, folks, because there's no way you're gonna be able to comb your hair the rest of your life. So there you go.
Well, so you kind of jumped into a question I had for you. What's Dan John's stance on youth sport specialization?
Hate it. Stupid. It's wrong. It's one of the biggest mistakes you can make. This rule called the Rule of 10,000. It was a crap study to start with, but there are three things where early specialization helps. Now, right over here on my very expensive chessboard, chess, classical instruments, and golf. Now, why those three is that each one of those gives you instant feedback. I think your baseball players, obviously baseball's different. It's weird to think, and don't take this wrong, but it's weird in my lifetime that baseball became a rich kid sport. It was just strange to see that in my lifetime. And in my lifetime, soccer football became a rich kid sport. I'm not being a jerk to rich kids. I'm just saying it was interesting to watch it because, my dad, even when he was, my dad, World War II veteran, got pretty messed up in the war. He always had a baseball glove and ball in his car. It was just, and if he and his friends would play catch at the office, and my dad, orphan and, tough life. And it's funny to see that, you don't see a lot of kids showing up to these youth games anymore with hand-me-down baseball gloves, do you? I used to have to play catch with my brother Gary. Now that's great, but my brother Gary was a left-hander, so I used to play catch with his glove, switch hands and throw it back. I was on the brink of figuring all this stuff out. I should just throw it left. So I'm against it. I don't know if I made my point clearly, because you know me, I don't. But these little girls that get stuck in. Now, if it's gymnastics and they're good, I understand it. But with the DNA aspect of volleyball, the DNA aspect of basketball, even soccer. You could see at the World Cup, the moment the world's soccer players caught up with our women's national team at all athletically, we got knocked out really quickly. So for 20 plus years, probably turn of the millennium, we've been dominating women's soccer because we have better athletes than anybody else in the world. And this year you saw it where the athletic abilities of the other nations came up and we got exposed we play one-sided and we only play with one leg generally. And when in doubt, Americans seem to just kick the ball as far as they can. And again, I'm sure there's a listener or two rolling their eyes and thinking, what a jerk I am. Okay, I'm a jerk, but I can't help myself. I got to be a big kid in this. I'm now a professor in 2 different schools. I have to be a big kid and say, hey, listen. And that upsets everybody. And then, they say I do hate speech because I'm so honest. That's not true.
So you alluded to this, but this is a question I had. You had brought this up last week when I was at your house for a workout. And so what existed 20 to 30 years ago in regard to youth athletic development that currently doesn't exist now, but you feel should make a comeback?
Let me show you what the problem is in the last 20 years. I don't know if you can see this. Do your gentle listeners see that? See, in my office here, I like to just keep $100 bills. So it's just because, I just, there's so many of them here. I don't know what to do with them all. In fact, every night I'm like Scrooge McDuck. I swim through $100 bills. Okay. What's hurt youth sports? It's money. That's the thing that hurts. The thing that's missing is the respect for scholastic sports. I've had girls at 2 schools now tell me, "Oh yeah, I play for the high school, but really my club team is much more important." I've heard that in soccer, and I've heard it in volleyball. These parents who are told that there's going to be scouts at this volleyball game. No school, no university in the world has scouts. Now, they have assistant coaches and they have head coaches, but there are no scouts. Now, in Major League Baseball, there's scouts, but where do the scouts come from? They come from the mothership, right? And honestly, after watching Moneyball, how valuable is it to have scouts, in this day and age? I mean, I know this. I don't know if you guys do this, but to me, I have a sniff test like for American football. If I have to shake their hand like this, I have to raise my hand to shake, and they're bigger than me and they're much faster than me, that's a good sign. Now, if they're shorter than me, slower than me, I'm 66, and weaker than me, I kind of go, I saw the films that your dad put together, but you're not good enough. I don't know how much you guys use the sniff test in baseball, but can't you sometimes just see? Can't you just see and just say, when a kid's pitching and you hear a noise in the catcher's mitt, that noise to me is as good as. So Jimmy when he was 11, he was the all-county championship pitcher. Who cares? Who cares? So for me, it's the loss of the respect for scholastic athletics, because the upside of scholastic athletics is they learn all those other life skills. And my favorite life skill that I learned, I just remember it like it was. I still remember it. We're getting ready to play the county championship, so that's Thanksgiving Day, 1974. And those of us who wrestled were all kind of sitting around going, because wrestling practice had already started, and we're like, oh man, we got to get in shape for wrestling. And one of the guys who didn't wrestle said, well, we do wind sprints every day. And it was like, yeah, the hardest football practice we've ever had is a Tuesday, the first 15 minutes of a wrestling session. So one of the nice things I learned playing 3, 4, 5 sports in high school, I played 5 sports in high school. So I was a goalkeeper, and then I played I played poorly in a church basketball league, and then football, wrestling, track and field, where I did the hurdles and the discus. And one of the things I learned is that the skills that you build up here, so if you play soccer, you'll learn triangulation really well, which carries over to basketball. And there are skills in basketball, for example, if you're one-sided on playing basketball in America, you're going to get destroyed. You have to be able to use both hands. Well, that'll teach you a good lesson about taking you back to the soccer field. Learning the hurdles, for example, in my case, taught me more about controlled speed than just doing a bunch of sprint drills and, the A-B drill, the A drill. Having someone start to pull ahead of you and having to take 3 steps with a hurdle on the way to accelerate more. That's, those are lessons. So I would say the loss of scholastic athletics.
Okay. That's great.
I mean, they're still there, but I guarantee you have people who poo-poo their school's baseball program. And the weird thing is, 40 years from now, you're going to have a real hard time finding any of those guys on that club team to hang around with at your reunion. It's just, yeah. I guess, I don't know. I'm guessing maybe it happens. I just haven't seen it, yeah.
So I had this question asked to me yesterday, and so I'll kind of phrase it in the way that's on your podcast, like age, what's going on, so you can answer it that way. It says, I'm a 25-year-old professional baseball relief pitcher who doesn't know really what days they're going to actually pitch. What is your recommendation for weight training, especially when their schedule has them playing games late at night? Do you recommend working on the morning, or what would your recommendations be? Well,
I mean, it's interesting because I don't know if you ever met Taylor Lewis. He's So Taylor was a relief pitcher, and he also pitched a year ago in a league because he was the trainer and they lost the reliever, and he said I can still pitch, and they won the championship, which is kind of cool. It was a semi-pro league in California. The trainer went to relief pitcher. I would always say this in baseball, and I think it's true for everybody. I think you have to do like hockey does. I think you have to train after the games. Now, it is so hard to do that. And I know that. And it's so hard. But there are a few ideas. Now, I'm not a huge believer in split programs, but I would like to tell you this. If you can, let's just say the reliever is a right-handed pitcher. After every time they play, I would have them do, if they're going to lift, left side single arm presses, single arm bench press, single arm rows, a light, a couple of 3 sets of 8 of a lightweight squat, maybe 3 sets of 8 of a tradition, like a trap bar deadlift or something like that, and maybe a loaded carry or two. When they don't pitch, I would go to the right side. So what's going to happen over this? So if they pitch, would about 4 nights a week be right for a reliever? No, well, if he's a closer, it's every damn night, right?
Yeah, anywhere from 2 to 4, but most likely going to be 2 to 3.
Okay, so on the nights you actually step out, I'm guessing if you're a right-handed pitcher, do single arm presses, single arm bench press, single arm rows with the non-throwing hand. Get some lower body work in. I'd love, and if machines are fine too, because we're just trying to keep you going. And if you don't pitch the next day, get the right side by itself in. Get the right side by itself. If there's any stiffness or soreness, fine movements, anything you can do to feel good. We're going to try to save that right arm as much as we can. But remember, and this is basic biology, the body is one piece. So when you're doing the squat, the machine, the whatever, all that magical stuff that's pumping around in your system, in the bloodstream, it's not just going to go to your left deltoid. It's going to move around everywhere. And one of the things I always recommend for injured athletes, and this is, I lead from the front on this one. When I broke this left wrist, I did front squats like this for a long time. I did presses like this for a long time. And my doctor said he'd never seen anyone recover so quickly. And my point was, well, yeah, because and I'm not going to, actually, I don't think it's a bad idea to think that an injury and a Major League Baseball player, there's a lot of similarities because there is a lot of violence on that arm when pitching. So that would be my idea. Now, if you don't like it, fine. On the days you don't pitch, might be a real good day to do some extra farmer walks and suitcase carries and mobility work. Just have a training session, not a workout, a training session where you get some work capacity work in, you do some mobility work, and you kind of do your best to fill in the blanks a little bit. That session is work capacity, loaded carries, mobility work, and then if you want to fill in any gaps you feel like you're having, dude, if you feel like you need to do some curls and calf raises, I don't think it's going to help you at all, but if it makes you feel good, do it. Okay? So you want to come out feeling, I feel pretty good.
Okay. So what if they decide not to work out after the game and say they're going to work out the day of before the game? How far in advance, like how many hours, should they work out if they're going to do that?
Well, I don't think it actually is going to matter a ton. I don't. Because you remember, obviously, even if it's before the game, just before, Jose, even if it's before that, they're still, as a reliever, going to have an hour at least or two. The things I would stay away from before a game would be like bench press and stuff like that. If you're going to press, overhead press, don't do anything too stupid to take your legs out of your, like 3 sets of 8 might be fine, with light squats just to feel good, move good kind of things. But, you don't want to be doing, some to 50 kind of thing or some challenge. You just want to, use movement, use the weight room as a movement baseball yoga. Get yourself to get out of there feeling good. Get the stuff moving. I would say anywhere from an hour or so before the Star Spangled Banner to the morning of. If you do it the morning of, I don't. A relief pitcher probably never gets much above 30 or 40 pitches, right?
Not usually. Not in today's game.
Yeah. So, you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. And then I would do, I would just be as smart as I can be about, beating down the moneymaker,
Okay. So let's go into the weight room with baseball, softball players. There's a lot of them that hesitate using barbells because of wrist and hand problems that can come from that. What are your thoughts on not using barbells, and what would you use instead?
Well, I mean, I can understand that. I mean, I would, and I get it. If I correct a Major League Baseball player's a pitcher. If I correct all their physical problems, I ruin their career. Their physical problems are what make them throw fast. That freakish. What's that weird elbow thing Major League Baseball players have? It's like, how they can go like this in the elbow.
Oh yeah, lay back.
Yeah, and that's not healthy. But if you don't like barbells, I use something called a true squat. It's Dave Draper invented it. So it's a little thing. It turns a back squat into a front squat. It's got these. So it's a little thing here. It's got two handles. That's a barbell squat. I don't know why you can't deadlift, but you could true squat with a barbell. You could easily deadlift. Weird thing is, I hear you saying that, but I guarantee those damn players are bench pressing, which is the single worst exercise I think a baseball player can do.
Dang. So any variation of bench press?
Well, I like the one-arm bench because it becomes a throwing exercise. And, I always tell people get their thumb in their armpit. Well, now, it might not be good for a pitcher because we might be getting them to be a little bit too loosed up, mobile in an area they don't need to be mobile in, Obviously, I think kettlebells, the one team I work with has become very kettlebelly. I know I can speak for probably 3 or 4 teams in the league that, they use easy strength variations with built-in exercise variations. And if you did something like easy strength, the funny thing is you probably can do the bench press because you're doing 2 sets of 5 in the one team. They do 2 sets of 5, every other workout. It's just not that much volume or anything. So you can stretch anything to work. But I would say, once you've built the engine, you probably just use suspension trainers and a kettlebell to get most of your work done as a baseball player. But many of the listeners missed the point. Once you built up the foundation, Yeah.
So there's a lift that's pretty popular among most baseball players. That's it's a barbell or a safety squat. Like I think is what you're talking about, that true squat. Reverse lunge.
No, I hate lunges. So
why do you hate lunges?
I just hate them. I hate burpees. I hate lunges. It's just more garbage. Stu McGill, and I've mentioned this in your podcast before, we are so over lunging, we're actually hurting people's pelvic bowls. The lunge is just an overrated exercise. I get, and if I'm going to throw the word in done correctly, you're probably okay, but no one does them correctly. So why am I doing an exercise? And these crappy coaches, it's like, oh, we got this lunge, that lunge. You're just getting the athletes tired. That's the nice thing about being a track and field coach. I've never seen an athlete jump higher, run faster, or throw farther doing lunges. With squat, I think seen a lot of people improve, but never lunges. So I hate lunges. So there. No more lunge questions, okay?
Got it. Sorry, I had to do it once. I had to do it.
Issue with violence. So, I don't, So,
Okay.
my attorney said that 3 strikes law is serious. Okay, so I can't no more lunge questions.
So, well, let's go back to the barbell then. Olympic lifting, baseball, softballers. What's your thoughts?
I mean, I think if you had a kid Olympic lift, I think they would. I think they would scorch. I would think they would scorch a lot of home runs because you just get freakishly strong. You might know somebody hit 1,000 in a softball league one year with almost all home runs. That me.
You?
I just hit it as hard as I physically could, and when you snatch 314 and clean 402, there's gonna be noise. There was a sound when I hit the ball, and Chuck Taylor told me to try to hit the pitcher's head, and it was great advice for me because I was trying to hit the pitcher's head every time, and that just flattened out my swing, and the ball just kept going. Yeah. I know look how great I am. But so, I mean, if you have a kid I can see the tool being used, might not be for everybody. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. So the reason I ask is because of another question. And this is actually a case I have right now as a kid who's quite strong from standard standpoint. I mean, he can front squat over 200 pounds. I mean, he's 17 years old. But he just doesn't have that snap, you would see on the field. So he goes to throw or hit, it's just not there. So I'm looking at it from the standpoint of Olympic lifting kind of sounds like the right idea, but this is also a kid who I don't know if I trust him with a barbell putting his wrist and elbow underneath it because of his terrible mobility.
And then that's when you fall. That's when you got to slide over to kettlebells. If the kettlebells don't work, you slide over the hip thrust machine and hope for the best.
Okay. So you'd switch over to kettlebells with this kid who doesn't have any snap?
And maybe hip thrusts, maybe that's what you have to do. And that's why I like I use Dynamax bands. You've seen it on the hip thrusts. I like bands on hip thrusts for an athlete because the band, we used to call it, acceleration training, compensatory accelerating training, something like that. It's the same reason chains work so well in bands is because you have to accelerate to get the band up. You're not going to get any momentum out of a band. With the bar, you can lurch a hip thrust with a bar up. You really can't with a band, and that's why I do it. And whether or not what I just said holds up to research, it might not, but I guarantee I'm right. And so don't waste your time on the research. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. This is why I come to you, so I don't have to read any research anymore.
I mean, sometimes, and I'm sure there's listeners who are like, yeah, I mean, sometimes the experience is right, and it doesn't always make sense, but, sometimes it's just right. It's like when they put together super teams and they don't do well. Any coach will tell you, you need to have role players. You need to have, if you have 25 superstars, there's only one ball. And so, so an experienced coach will tell you, sometimes it's better to have, one or two superstars. In American football, those two superstars are going to get you 80% of the points, but then you need a supportive class to take care of, the hard work, holding the ball on a PAT, blocking, tackling, all those little things. But you can't all be superstars. Yeah.
All right. Well, I've got 2 more questions for you. The first one is mainly for you, and that is, what's your favorite memory you have from your athletic career?
It's funny, I actually have a list of them. I actually wrote down a list at the Olympic Training Center. Well, towards the top, I mean, winning the nationals on my last clean and jerk was pretty cool. Yeah. But it's weird. it's the first one. It was 1967. I was on a third grade, and I was on a fifth, fourth, and third grade team, baseball. And I had a 0.000 batting average, and I've talked about this in my books. And I wasn't any good, and I was from a family of athletes, but they just, my brother Gary would just basically tell me every day, "You suck," and my brother Phil would, just punch me. So it wasn't a real good thing. But I was the youngest kid on the team. I'm a third grader, and I was also younger than everybody else on third grade. I was the youngest third grader. So I went up to the high school the day before the championship game. Isn't this funny how these things happen? And a guy named Dale Kirsten saw me swinging away, and he took a few minutes aside, and he showed me to keep your eyes open and swing level. Keep your eyes open, swing level. And by God, if it didn't happen, and you know what I'm about to say, there's 2 outs, there's a man on third, and we're down. And our captain, the fifth grader, who thought he was God, which is just funny to think about, because I don't think he was ever an All-American or a national champion. But we'll keep going with the story. And he said, "Who's up?" And I said, "Me." And he goes, "Oh, then we're going to lose." And I kept my eyes open. I swung level. I got the hit. I got to first base. The first base coach was so excited. And we won the championship. And, there's so many lessons in that story. For one thing, I went from hating sports to liking it. A couple lessons for your listeners. No one told me to go to the high school by myself and practice swinging. I did that on my own. I didn't hire a coach. A kind person came by and saved my life and helped me. And the most important thing is that my sister's high school reunion, years later, she took Dale Kirsten aside and said, "My brother talks about you all the time, about how you took time aside to help him out." And he says, "I don't remember it at all." And he said, "Funny, I've heard of your brother as an athlete, but I didn't know that." And Corian said, "Well, he considers you the most important part." And I think I've had a tough time in the last few years with my life, and you know that. So when I think about that story right now, I'm emotional. I'm emotional because someone I didn't know stepped up and changed my life. And that's what coaching's all about.
It's a great story. I never get tired of hearing it.
40 years later, I won the national championship and broke the American record in the weight pentathlon. Yeah. All because of that. Yeah. It's just, I was 10, folks. I was 10 or 9, whatever I was. Yeah. Yeah. So there you go.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Dan, that's all I got for you. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Absolutely. And anytime I'm here for you because you help me, and I really appreciate it. And you're a good man. And folks, he's the real deal.
Appreciate that. Well, thanks again for coming on.
You bet. Hey, we'll talk soon, okay?
Yes, sir. See ya.